So we finally did it. We got our spices organized. Welcome back to another video, everybody, and today I want to circle back around to a topic that we touched on a few months back. Now, a while ago we made a video discussing some of the common mistakes we see during kitchen designs. And if you haven't seen that video, I encourage you head back and watch it. I will throw a link up in the top corner and one down in the description below. But stop, no, not right now. I mean, wait till this video is over. This time around, I want to focus on one particular aspect of kitchen design, and that is mistakes made during the layout stages. So where our cabinetry is going, what our spacing should be, all of that good stuff. So one of the most common mistakes made during the layout stage is thinking about circulation, or I should say not thinking about circulation. It's really easy to get caught up in the most storage and the most countertop space, really the most of anything. But this can come at the cost of circulation and open space, the part that actually allows us to move around and work in our kitchens. This leads to our kitchens feeling cramped or restricted, especially if you have multiple cooks working in there or if our kitchen lies in a heavily trafficked portion of our homes. Now, the solution to this problem is a rather easy one. We just need to make sure we leave enough space between our countertops, somewhere in that 40 to 48 inch range. Now remember, you also need to include adequate space for your cabinets and your appliances to open with enough room to move around them comfortably. Now I'm going to pair these next two together because I think they often go hand in hand, and that is making sure we have a proper workflow and building that workflow for who is actually going to be working in the space. So a good layout is essential for a good workflow, and a good workflow is key to how much we're going to enjoy spending time and working in our kitchen once the renovation is complete. In the early stages of planning your kitchen, think about how you're actually going to use the space. Make sure you have enough countertop room next to your sink and next to your range, and even a drop area located near the fridge. And importantly, think about how much countertop room you have between your sink and your cooktop, because this is often going to become your main working area. Now, taking this one step further, it's a good idea to plan your storage around the particular items that are going to be needed in each location of your kitchen. So for example, having your spices or your cooking oils close to the range, or a bank of drawers where you can store your cutlery for setting the table or easily emptying your dishwasher. This is why I group number 2 and 3 together, because part of workflow is who is actually going to be working in the kitchen. If both you and your partner like cooking or baking or working in the kitchen together, this should be incorporated and planned for in the layout. As I mentioned earlier, most kitchens plan for a prep area near the sink and a cook area near the range and some sort of drop area close to the fridge. However, if you have multiple cooks in there at pretty well all times, this might not work for you. As you're planning the layout for your kitchen, try and incorporate as many prep surfaces as possible. They all don't need to be large, expansive islands, but just enough room for somebody to work comfortably. Another great solution, if you have the space of course, is a small secondary prep sink. This is definitely an item that my wife and I would have loved to have incorporated in our own kitchen, because there's just some times when you're both in there working, it would make life just that much easier. Speaking of circulation and open space and workflow, that brings me to point number 4, and that's trying to force an island into your layout. Don't get me wrong, islands are great in kitchen design. They add extra prep space, they add extra storage, they even often add an area for someone to sit and have a conversation. However, if all of those come at the cost of circulation and workflow within our kitchen, it just becomes wasted space. So when it comes to including a kitchen island in your layout, refer back to circulation. If you don't have roughly 40 inches between your cabinetry or countertops, it's probably better to leave the island out. Now, speaking of islands, we have a video coming up completely dedicated to that subject, so make sure to smash that subscribe button down below and click that little bell icon so you don't miss it when it comes out. Next up is poorly positioned cabinetry. And this extends past just storing items in a poor location within your kitchen. Poorly positioned cabinetry can result in doors or drawers bumping into one another, into an appliance, or even completely blocking a walkway. This becomes especially noticeable in the corners of our kitchens. Now, this may seem like a waste of time, but it's a good idea to examine your layout carefully and think about how every door and drawer is going to open and how that is going to impact the space surrounding them. So as I mentioned earlier, a main problem area is the corners of our kitchens. So one thing I often like to do is include a small filler section that bumps one set of cabinets out slightly further from the other. This prevents any doors or drawers that open from whacking and banging the hardware on the adjoining wall. Now, a big part of kitchen layout is our appliances. And a major problem that can arise here is choosing the wrong appliances for your space. It always surprises me how many people purchase the wrong size of appliances. Now this is most common with the built-in style options where they don't have a necessary cutout or they don't have enough depth for the cooktop, but it also applies to just the freestanding appliances as well. Another important point to consider is the size of the kitchen you're working on. If you're dealing with a smaller kitchen layout or a smaller space, it's probably not worth introducing a large 48-inch range or a 60-inch fridge that's going to eat up a ton of countertop space and take away a bunch of your storage options. In building, you'll often hear the saying, measure twice, cut once. Well, the same goes for your kitchen appliances, measure twice, buy once. And don't forget to take into account what those appliances are going to do to your space when their doors are opened. This is one of the reasons French door refrigerators have become so much more common than a traditional style, and that's because their doors take half the amount of space when they're open. Alrighty, one of my favorite topics, ignoring lighting. Yep, I'm bringing it up again. I mean, it's been a few weeks, so why not, right? And if you're wondering how lighting can impact layout, well, here you go. As I've said countless times before, lighting plays a massive role in how our kitchen looks and how our kitchen functions. As you plan your layout, be sure to also think about lighting placement at the same time. For example, if you want to include an island or a peninsula, make sure you've got the capacity to add in pendants or some sort of task lighting above. Now, it should also be added, don't prioritize aesthetics over function when it comes to your lights. I've said before that lighting is a great way to introduce personal character and some of your personal style and just your own je ne sais quoi into the space. And I still believe that's true. But just make sure the lights you're choosing are actually practical. And the last item on today's list, I probably shouldn't say this out loud because don't assume you need a new layout. I brought this up before and I'll probably bring it up again in the future, but sometimes your layout isn't the problem. You may hate your current kitchen for any number of reasons. But before you go jumping to conclusions, sit back, relax, maybe have a glass of wine, and think about your space from a purely functional perspective. Ask yourself, does the current layout allow me to work comfortably and efficiently? If the answer to that question is yes, that's great. You don't really have to make a ton of changes to the layout, and you can focus on the purely aesthetic design portions of the kitchen. If the answer is no, now is the time to ask yourself, why doesn't this kitchen work for me? If you can answer that one simple question, determining a new layout and planning your kitchen from there will become so much easier. Well, that about sums up another round of tips and tricks to help you all create the best kitchen layout possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Now, speaking of layouts, I'm gonna make myself a coffee, head up to the studio, and work on and design one of probably the most challenging rooms or spaces or kitchen layouts I've ever had to tackle. So maybe I'll make a video on kind of a walkthrough of it after it's done, or a tour, or try and give you a little bit of insight into how my brain works and went about planning that space. If something like that would interest you, let me know down below.